Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second live stream of the Winter Art Snacks Quarterly Box. I'm really excited to dive into this demo because it is all about like using the sketchbook as a tool, not just as um, a sketchbook, but like more as part of like like a character in your art piece. And that was one of the things, like when I found out that we were going to be including a sketchbook in this box, this was the thing I was most excited to demo. So we're going to be working with doing like cutouts and like windows inside of your sketchbook today. I'm going to demo a few different options, and then I also have a bunch of other kind of ideas for you. And once we kind of get through some of the first ones I have planned out to go through, there'll also be a chance for you to like type into chat maybe which one you're interested on having me expand on a little bit if it's something you want to put in your sketchbook. So um, I'm real excited to show you what I have, and you can go ahead and switch the view here. So I have this pulled down pretty far, so just let me know if this is a good view. Since the sketchbook is a smaller size, I didn't want to have like the camera super far back and you not be able to see. So this, if you remember last time, this was me doing some swatching of the box. Um, and I actually this was a swatch page, and you can kind of see that in the background here. And I transformed it into one of these cutout pages. And this is a more literal use of a cutout page, like using a door as a door to the next page. And it's like a little lift the flap um, concept there. And I love this for multiple reasons. It's really simple, and but the concept is powerful, you know? And it reused a page like this where I was kind of testing out how the product was working on the page, and I was able to repurpose it and draw over it and turn it into something else. And I love being able to take pages in my sketchbook that I would consider like this isn't necessarily like a throwaway page. This is like stuff like this is very cool. Excuse me. And I love having it in my sketchbook. But when you're trying to make like your whole sketchbook, maybe a more cohesive concept, being able to have ideas of how to turn it into something else is really helpful. And this is also a really good idea for maybe a page that you were disappointed with, or you worked, 75% on, but then just like weren't loving where it was going anymore. You can turn it into something else. So this is a great idea. Um, I'm going to show you how I cut these. I do it with an X-Acto knife and then a cutting mat, and I'll show you which ones I use. And then this is showing through one of the galaxy compositions I did on the last live stream. And so if you're looking for what to put behind some of these cutouts, that is an idea. That playback is posted on Mix, and I believe it's also posted on YouTube. So if you wanted to look at how to create one of these galaxy compositions, that's where you can find that. Um, and if you want me to go over exactly how I did this door or any of the other ones I'm showing, I can definitely do that during class. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of go through some of my other flip throughs. But I can definitely make time to show that one. Here is another concept that is also more of a literal way to use these cut through designs where I'm using a window as an actual window. And so this is pretty simple concept, but again, the result is pretty powerful. And this is also using a composition that we uh, went through together last time in last class. So if you're looking for how to do this background, you can reference that previous class. Um, and yeah, I was really happy with how these turned out with the flip throughs. I actually made this composition and you couldn't really see the trees very well. Like they stopped like right here, and so I went back and raised up the skyline so you'd be able to see it better. And then this is the one I'm going to be working on first today in class, and this is using cutouts in a more abstract way. So I'm using leaves um, here and going to be cutting out the leaf, just like this one, if you can see that that's a cutout. These little branches are pretty fragile, so I'll see how those hold up. But the next page is a landscape, a monochromatic landscape using a single color. And I made the landscape with the markers that came in our box. And so this one, I have like uh a lot of ideas for um, what you could put, what you choose to cut out. It doesn't necessarily have to be leaves, but depending on what color you want to do your landscape in, I was thinking different kinds of fruit would be really good. If you wanted to do like a red landscape in the back, and then all of the little um, cutouts that you did on the front were all like watermelon shapes or cherry, apple. Um, Another idea would be to do a yellow landscape and then make the front of the cutouts like hexagons, like a beehive or little bees. So that is what we're going to start with today. And I'm going to walk you through some of the tools I use to do this, and then I'm going to walk you through how I make one of these landscape pages. Um, and then I think we might have time for a couple other extra things at the end, and we'll just see. I always plan so much stuff for these classes because I'm worried that I'm not going to like have enough to talk about, and then of course, I end up with just like too much to talk about. So for these leaves to cut out, the first thing I grab is a cutting mat, and this one is for like sewing, so it's really long, but um, they make ones that, are only like 10 inches long, which that one would probably be um, better for a use like this. So mine's a little bit awkwardly shaped, but it will work just fine. And when I'm doing the cutouts, I just slide in the cutting mat right underneath my sketchbook page. And then I use an X-Acto knife. I think these are also called like craft knives. And I was just going to show you like two different ones I have. So this one has like a molded, nice handle. Um, but I actually need to replace the blade in this one, so I'm not going to be using this one today. This one's probably like a little bit more expensive, um, but you don't need to get an expensive one. This is one I've had, I think, since college, and I've replaced the blade on it a couple times. And this one is an X-Acto brand. Um, and yeah, it works great. So you don't need something super fancy. You can get the cheapest one. And it'll work great. And then you just need to make sure that whatever shape that you're cutting out is like connected all the way. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Like, so for like this leaf cutout, you want to make sure that the area that you've drawn is one continuous shape. So like that's why I couldn't cut out the center of where these like little spines came up, because this needs to float through the center. So if you need me to explain that in more detail, I can. But you just want to make sure that basically if you're if you're cutting out letters, like if you were cutting out the letter O, that's a really bad O. But if you're cutting out the letter O, you would have to leave like a little trail to the center for it to stick up there. Um, Otherwise it like the center will have nothing to stand up by. Um, if that makes sense. So let me know if that doesn't make sense, and I will go into that a little bit more. But I also love how you end up with these like little pieces of the leaves. Like my little collage heart is going crazy over the little leaf pieces because I'm definitely going to do something with those. So I'm excited about that. Um, so I've sketched out several different leaves here. And before I cut out my next one, I'm just going to go over with my pencil and darken out the line that I'm going to cut on. So it's easier for me to see where I need to cut, and it's also easier for you guys to see exactly what I'm doing. So I need to make sure that I'm leaving that continuous space. And if the continuous space thing is hard for you to visualize when you're first sketching, I just sketched these leaves out normal, and then I kind of went back to figure out where my cut line is. So you don't have to worry about it too much when you're first sketching out. You can just go back and figure out where you're going to put that cut line. So hopefully that's more clear there. And then of course, always practice safety if you're going to be using a cutting device, utensil. Never put your hand behind where you're cutting. That's probably just like if you've ever done printmaking, you know that that's like you've never put your hand like in front towards where you're cutting. And since with an X-Acto knife, since you'll be pulling towards yourself, you don't want to have that hand right there. So you kind of want to keep your hand to the side as much as possible or in front, so that if you do happen to like skip over your page with a sudden movement, that your hand is out of the way. So um, make sure you're always practicing safety with that. And I just replaced the blade on this recently, and if you're using a new blade on your X-Acto knife, you should be able to cut through this paper um, pretty easily. But if you're using an older blade, it might take a couple tries to go over the design a couple times. And you just want to go slow and just try to be as precise as possible. I feel like this is always one of those things I will watch people online make videos of, and it looks like it takes like 2 seconds to do, and then you do it yourself, and you're like, wow, this is actually pretty time consuming. Isn't that always the case? Um, and something good about this sketchbook is that the paper is heavy enough to like um, hold the structure of a cutout page. Where if this was a sketchbook with like a regular weight drawing paper, it's going to be a little bit trickier to do cutout things where you might have to reinforce the page first. So let's see how that's doing. I kind of like to press down with my blade. I'm not pushing through all the way there, so let's go over that again. And sometimes it also helps to have a little pair of scissors handy for some of the trickier corners, if all of the edges are loose except one. So I went over that twice, and now you can see that it's starting to come away from the paper. And I would definitely just say go slow and like a kind of like a less is more. Like you'd rather have to go over it twice and make like a really precise cut than to go press like too hard and then you're going to make a movement that would maybe cut through your whole design or something. So definitely want to be precise. I'm going to cut around the other side of the leaf here.
Hey, Caitlin, Sarah, jumping in
Yes.
here real quick.
Yeah.
Um, Whenever I use an X-Acto blade, it always brings me back to college. You're right. Those things last forever. So once you have one that you really like, it just makes sense to just have it.
Yeah.
Um, but what I wanted to bring up was this feels like it could very well be like a crossover lesson between Art Snacks and Art Journal Snacks. Um, I think in a lot of live streams that Erin has taught, she does a lot of adding to the page. And what I really love about this lesson is that we're subtracting from the page.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about Erin when I was prepping for this lesson, and I was
Totally.
like, I think Dr. Erin would be very proud of me. Especially, I'm going to talk a little bit later about some of the storytelling elements that you can really bring into something like this, and that really makes me think of art journaling. And like, I mean, I can kind of talk about that now. Um, I think if you're looking, oop, I just need to hold on to that piece a little bit better. Ooh. If you're looking to like kind of expand upon this idea even more, I think I've seen like a lot of people kind of use this cutout as a metaphor, if that makes sense. So like if you're picking like a quote, like a song lyric, um, and you're the song lyric could be like corners of my mind or something. And then like one page is revealing like a door that then opens up to like a brain or something like that. So it's like you're kind of illustrating that metaphor. And then on the opposite page, you can write in that quote or whatever quote was inspiring you. And so yeah, I don't know. So that really, I'm like, ooh, this is getting very art journaly when I was thinking about kind of those elements of it. And I love stuff like that. I've seen where people make kind of these really artfully done, like full song lyric books, where it's like the whole sketchbook is one song and they illustrate like every single lyric to it in this like really creative way with cutouts and pop-ups and um yeah, I that really inspires me. Okay, see how I'm doing. This is very fragile. I was actually kind of nervous about keeping in these spines, but the first leaf I did looked so good with the spines that I was like, I have to keep them in. So this is just, I'm gonna rotate this around real quick so I can do this at a different angle. And like maybe something I'll have to do is like, I don't know, like laminate my cutout page. I think would be kind of cool. Um,
I just had an idea. You could also, just to reinforce like the structure of that center, like spine of the leaf,
yes.
on the back side of that page, excuse me, you could take like tissue paper. I mean, it sort of defeats the purpose of like a window, but you could take tissue paper that's like green or whatever color you want and glue it to the back so it has like the spine as
It's-
something to rest on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Then it becomes a collage and it's just like, it means so many other things.
Right. I I also kind of like the idea of gluing down the spines of the leaves on the landscape page and making it like even more abstract. Because I think that could look pretty cool. Especially if you turn the spines into something else. Like you keep going with it. Um, and that'll just have to be one of my future iterations on this. Okay, so we finally cut it out, and now we have this beautiful leaf made out of watercolor paper that will definitely collage into something later. Add it to my little collection over here. Um, and then we get the big reveal, which is the best part. So, woo! So now we have three leaves here, looking beautiful. And just a reminder, this is what the other page looks like. Um, and now I want to take a moment before cutting out anything else, and I want to start a landscape like this. So you know how to get started on something like that. And this requires getting the page wet. And so you have to kind of take breaks in between each layer. So I want to like get that started so that I can show you the additional steps during the live stream. Um, and yeah, very fun. So I love that effect. It's just so big. This is another one of my concepts of a uh collage, or not collage, like a stack of Polaroids kind of spread out. And then each little Polaroid picture would have its cut out there. So we'll see if we get to one of those, but I'm going to work on creating a landscape on this page right behind it. And first thing I'm going to do is to sketch out like a little border for myself just because I don't plan on going all the way to the edge of the page. So I'm uh, sketching this out with one of the watercolor colored pencils that came in our box. And I'm just making a small little border that I'm going to try to be staying inside of as I do the landscape. This isn't necessary, but um, I I like to do it. It helps me.
Hey, Caitlin, just noticed in the chat, Alyssa suggested they have holographic single-sided laminate. That is fun if you like sparkle.
Oh, that does sound fun. How fun would that be? A holograph leaf page? Could you imagine this? I think I'll have to look into that. I'm excited about how many cutouts I'm gonna have in here at the end of this. You guys just wait until next live stream. I come back with my sketchbook. It'll be all sparkly. Um, so I'm picking a color. I think I'm gonna try doing this with red. Um, and I'm going to pick a color that we have from the box that came in both a pencil and a marker. And so for the very, very back uh, layer, um, on this one you can see it was a really light green. And so the back part, just ignore this little red stain. My brush wasn't clean, so whoops. But uh, in this very back one, I didn't use the marker on it. I used the green marker for the front, the foreground pieces, and I used the green pencil for the very back. So I'm going to do the same thing here with the red. And I'm just very lightly going over this whole area with the red pencil. And if you've used the watercolor pencils yet, you know that they are super pigmented and like a little goes a long way. So uh, just I would recommend putting down the lightest amount first and then seeing how that looks and then adding to it as needed. So I just kind of sketched over that very lightly. And then I'm taking the treacle brush that also came in the box, and I'm going to be dipping it into my water cup here, and going over the whole thing. So it's like, I don't know is it helpful for you to see my water cup or not? I don't know. Let me know if for some reason it is, and I'll put it back into frame.
I think we're good. I don't think we need
Okay,
this.
great, cool. And this paper is going to absorb that water pretty quickly, and I'm trying not to get it completely, like you definitely want to hit all of it with water, for the pigment to spread out, but you don't have to like really get it totally soaked, if that makes sense. So, and I encourage you to leave, uh, whatever texture is created, by, like leaving in some of these you can't like leaving in some of these darker areas or where the pigment's collecting. Um, I would encourage you not to brush that all out and make it smooth. I think it adds something to the composition by having that texture in there. And since this is the background kind of supposed to look like the sky, it lends itself to look kind of cloudy and ethereal. Okay. And while I'm going to let that dry for just a second before I go to a next step, because we're going to be using the marker directly over this, and you don't want it to just start bleeding into the water right away. So you do need to let it dry. But I wanted to talk a little bit about uh, some other cutout ideas for a landscape like this. So this one's going to be red, and I had mentioned that it would be good for like a watermelon or fruit cherry kind of thing. And so I'm just going to use this opposite page here to sketch out some ideas for that, where the shape is all a continuous shape or just an easier one to cut out. So for the watermelon one, I would probably cut out like the half shape of a watermelon slice, a half moon shape. And then uh, like you could leave the rind as part of the page, and color it green and leave it intact. Or you could just go ahead and cut it out and have it red too. I think the point will still come across that it's a watermelon. And then your next page, or your next shape here would be the inside of the watermelon. Now, the tricky part's going to come with the seeds of the watermelon, because like typically when you see a watermelon illustrated, it's kind of like has the seeds in it or something like that. Um, and if you're cutting out this semicircle shape, those are just going to fall through. So I think something you could do is leaving some of the seeds like closer to the edge, and then you're cutting those out with the edge, or just completely just making this a simple semicircle shape and then um, attaching the leaves, or sorry, attaching the seeds to like the landscape side and just kind of like making it look a little bit more abstract, or incorporating those like the dark seeds into the design this way. Um, and you can, like, if you were to leave these on the edge, they kind of look without any context here, they kind of look a little bit like teeth, but I think if you were to color them black like they look in a watermelon, I think that would look just fine, and would certainly get the point across. But I'm going to just leave this as a simple um, cut through like this for now. And I'm going to move on to another fruit design that would look good with one of the orange or yellow ones for an orange or a lemon.
Jumping in here real quick, Caitlin. Alyssa also suggested, or you could do 3 pages and cut the seeds out of the red page.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Getting real creative here.
I
First
know.
holographic paper and now cutting more pages.
I love it. This is such an easy like thing to like really um like once you have one idea going with this, it can really like snowball into like so many different ideas and I love that. I love something that keeps me creatively like motivated and excited. Um and yep, that is actually one of the ideas I have written on my prompt list is to create a multi-page cutout, you know, so um, just as she described with doing 3 pages. So you kind of think of it as doing a foreground, midground, and background page. So sketching out another little like orange or like, you know, fruit shape here. But instead of keeping this a semicircle, you start to draw in those um, kind of like, I don't even know what those are called, little lemon shapes, rind, like it's not a rind because that's the outside, but the membrane. There you go. Um, and then that can start to look very like lemony orange or grapefruit. And the color palette that we have in this box is just lends itself really well to doing some really like bright fruit designs. So I think you could definitely go with like the yellow. And we don't have an orange marker, but we do have the orange colored pencil. But really with these, you know, you don't have to stick with realistic colors. You can do whatever you want. And I would encourage you to really um, you know, you can apply this to any like fruit shape. You can do like kiwi and create your own design on figuring out how to make it a shape that would be easy to cut out. Um, okay, so this is dry enough. So I'm going to go back to this and show you how I do that first layer here. So I'm going to be using the brush side of the marker. And you want to decide how much of your sky you want showing. And I'm going to go pretty close to the top here. And you can pull up a reference if you need it. That's what I did. I just pulled up like mountain landscape reference just to have something to go off of. And so for this back one, I'm just making a single line. And then I'm going to go back to my brush and start to brush it out. So for some of the later like layers, future layers on here, uh I'm going to make a thicker line and go over it multiple times to make it look darker because we really want the layers in the background to appear the lightest and the layers in the foreground to appear the darkest. And so now I'm taking my brush after dipping it into my water cup, and I'm just starting to pull down this line. And it's not going to be able to reach the bottom of your landscape all the way, but you do want to pull it down pretty far. And you can really keep uh, working at the edge of the line, and where the marker line originally is will kind of just disappear. But what you don't want to do is to go above that marker line, because then it's going to make it's going to spread out above it and kind of ruin the gradient effect and trick that this landscape um, is is actually in the distance. Like um, it'll kind of become a little too muddied. So you want to keep that really rigid line on the top. But it is tricky, so just be careful around the top of that marker. Okay, so that is the next layer complete, and I'm happy with how that's looking. But now, again, we're going to be using the marker for the next step. So you want to give this a little bit of dry time before you come in with the marker, because otherwise it's just going to immediately bleed into that area that we just made wet. So give it a little bit of time. And in the meantime, I'm going to do another of the leaf shapes. And we get to just continue to see how this composition develops as we cut out more leaves. I'm so excited. This is like, I love things that have this big reveal to them, and like you have this like picture in your mind and you don't get to see it all the way to come together. But man, when I cut out that first leaf, and then the green popped through, I was like, oh yes, this is amazing. There's a lot of, I don't know, like excitement with that. So before I do my cutout, I'm gonna again do like I did the first time, and I'm gonna go and darken up that cut line so I can see a little bit clearer exactly where I'm cutting. And this one is more simple. It doesn't have a bunch of little tiny spines. It's just kind of one spine through the center. And this is like a filler leaf. You see, I have like a couple filler ones, and then I have like more of like my main characters here. And that's something you can explore with the fruit too. Like if you have like a bunch of slices and then maybe you cut the seeds out in between, or you do polka dots, or you come up with all sorts of filler shapes. And if you've been an art snacker for a long time, you might remember Bai Bun when she did her like big watermelon and banana pages for ArtSnacks YouTube videos. And if you haven't watched like the backlog of her stuff, definitely go on ArtSnacks YouTube and watch the box breakdowns. And you'll find what I'm talking about with the with the banana one. But she creates this like crazy page in a sketchbook that is just completely filled with bananas, and then I think she repeats it and does it with watermelon. So um, she would definitely get a kick out of this kind of thing. Okay, so that one cut out pretty easily. And there's our little leaf piece, so cute. Okay, and then now we're getting to see how that's developing there. So I'm really interested to see as this keeps going, like how much of, like, will it look exactly like a landscape even with the leaf piece over, or will it be abstracted enough? I don't know. We'll see. And that's something that like you can certainly make your landscape first or make your cutout page first and then um, kind of change each one as needed. Because it's like looking at this now, I guess, for example, like there's a pretty hard cutoff here on this leaf. And it's like, would I want to add like another like hill in the distance to on this page to make that look more cohesive? But I think it's something I'll have to figure out as more of these get cut out. And since that one's pretty easy, I'm going to go ahead and cut out another one of these right here. And then by the time I'm done with this one, I think I should be ready to show you how to put that next step in the landscape.
I guess now would be my time to hop in here and tell you that we're halfway through class.
All right, great. All right. Another little leaf gone, and that is how it's looking. Yep, I'm real happy with how that's turning out. And I don't know, I love having something just really like tactile in sketchbooks. So I think this is really fun. Um, and I had mentioned, I had mentioned that about, it'll come back to me. I was too focused while I was cutting that out, but let's go to the landscape. So back to using my red uh, landscape or my red marker here. I'm going to be working on that uh, next layer. And so again, like there's no rules to this of how close all of your layers need to be. You can even overlap them. You can start the next one higher than you did the first one. You just want to make sure that something's peeking out from the previous um, layer of mountains. So I'm just going to kind of go a little bit down here. And since this is the second one, I'm going to make this line a little bit thicker. And that is so that there's just a little bit more pigment on the page to pull down, and it's going to keep this area, when we pull it down, it's going to keep it a little bit darker than this area. And so what that does is each layer is going to get darker and darker as it comes forward, and it's going to create the illusion that that first layer is a lot closer to us. So again, I'm going to get my brush wet and continually just go to pull all of this down. And even though there is some wait time with letting this dry, it's not like um, it's not something that like you'll really have to leave and need to come back to. Like you can kind of do a little sketch or something on the side, and then it will be ready to draw on. So that's good for me because I'm pretty impatient with like really letting something dry. Um, and so that is nice that this isn't something that like you have to wait a really long time for. And the paper in this sketchbook is like lends itself really well to this kind of thing that it does dry pretty quickly. And another thing I think that helps it dry is like I turned the page to close it to work on something else, and this page is going to absorb some of that moisture as well. And uh, that'll help it dry, but you do have to kind of be okay with getting some residue on the opposite page. So I'm just going and pulling that all down, and I'm also going to kind of focus my brush up here to really spread apart uh, exactly where those marker lines are so you don't see them as much. Okay, I remember what I was going to tell you guys. So I knew it would come back to me. Um, but if you had tuned in last live stream, we talked about all of these like galaxy and northern lights inspired landscape designs. And then I published an article to Mix that gave you some more prompts for your sketchbook because I want you to be able to fill up the sketchbook. And so every lesson, I'm going to be giving you a list of ideas to kind of like expand on with these. So I was just going to remind you guys that soon after the live stream, I will be publishing an article that similar to the last one that kind of walk through some of these cutout ideas. And I won't be able to like demo every single concept, but I'll be describing in detail and giving you some more like jumping off points to work on some of these cutout pieces. Um, and if you haven't watched that live stream, you can go back. I've mentioned that it's on Mix and YouTube. And then on Mix, you can also view that article then to look up the prompts from the previous live stream. So especially if I'm someone that like I find prompts like that and like looking at other people's ideas like helps spark ideas for myself. So if you just need to read through something to really like ignite that creativity, I urge you to go check that out. And so I need to let this dry. So I'm going to flip this over. And first, I'm just going to show you this one isn't as pretty. But oh, here's some stuff from the previous live stream, little sneak peek if you missed it. But this was kind of like a mess up page of mine. And I had put these like stars in, and I just ended up scribbling across the whole thing because it was just, like a doodle that went wrong, I guess. But on the opposite page was one of my Northern Lights compositions, and so I started cutting out the light, like the stars on this side. And I'm excited to see where this one goes. I think I want to cut them all out first and then keep adding illustrations on top of this page. But that's just another example of, maybe you have some of these kind of like mess up pages in your sketchbook and you're looking for a way to really like transform them and make them be like more of a part of your sketchbook and not just like a page that you want to like skip over, like flip through over faster. And you can really like enjoy every single page in your sketchbook. So there's another little idea for you to transform a page. And if you really need to, you can like paint over the entire page with like white or black paint or go over it with this I've gone over with the purple marker mostly to cover up whatever was there. So um, yeah, let's get back to the leaves. I'm going to do another cutout on here and then return to the landscape. And I kind of want to try to do this curvy one up here. So I'm just going over and darkening up that line so I can see exactly where I need to cut. And I'm not sure, I think like doing more angular cuts with an X-Acto knife would probably be easier or like more beginner friendly than going around curves, but you get the hang of it pretty quick. And maybe just be okay with some inconsistencies when you're first getting started. Doing stuff like this reminds me of working on like an altered book project, if you've ever done something like that. Um, and I don't know, I really just like the idea of turning an entire sketchbook into more of like a concept book, um, rather than like filled with like a bunch of like random drawings. Like most of my sketchbooks are just like completely miscellaneous stuff. And so but I have worked on like an altered book piece before, and I just love how cohesive it is as a story. I was lucky enough at the high school that I attended. I actually, fun fact, I actually moved during high school. So I like moved after my freshman year. And so it sounds rough because like you would think like moving to like a totally new place during high school would be like, I don't know, that's how like every like teenage high school movie starts. And it being like an awful experience or something going wrong. But I was really lucky. My move went really well. I mean, I wouldn't like say it was fun all the time, but I had a pretty good experience being a new student. And the high school that I moved into had a really big art program, and I was not really into like being a serious artist at the time. But they offered like a wide range of classes. So I took Intro to Art was like my most formal art class I took. Um, where that kind of went through like all of your basics of drawing and painting a little bit and learning faces and different stuff. I don't know. Mostly a random stuff, but all kind of like an intro level. But then we had ceramics classes and we had photography where we did film photography and a couple classes I didn't get the opportunity to take, but I thought it was really cool that our school offered it was they offered a graphic design class. And then they also offered uh, um, an arts and crafts class. And that was everyone took arts and crafts to get like their art credit because uh, it it didn't have any prerequisites and you could like you didn't have to take like the intro to art to take it. And so I think people really loved it because one of the projects they taught was an altered book where you got like a I think even like our library might have provided the books like of ones they were getting rid of or were damaged or something. And you created an art piece out of it, doing stuff kind of like this, where you're cutting out pages, gluing pages together, adding stuff to it. And something else they taught was they did needlework, like crochet and knitting, which was pretty cool. I didn't get the chance to take a lot of these classes, but I just thought it was really cool that it was offered. But I did take intro to art and I took the film photography, which I loved. Um, that was such a cool process to learn. I loved being one of like the cool kids that got to like go to the dark room on like my study hall to develop film. I sounded so serious. Okay, checking out this leaf cutout, and there's still a few areas I need to go over. And I'm just gonna lift this up a little bit, see where I need to cut. Okay, around this edge here. I am trying to keep all those spines intact. But it will all be worth it for the reveal of the green behind it. But since this one is close to the top, I'm interested how it'll look with kind of more of that lighter color. And I took a little bit of a different approach cutting this one out, where I'm focusing more on cutting out this, like the spine shape first, because I noticed when I cut around the outside of the leaf first, it made the inside a little bit less stable to cut out. And so this has actually been really helpful in keeping the whole thing stable. All right. Okay, so that's fully removed. And then I'm going to go around the outside. Kind of move my cutting mat around. That's looking good. So note to self, get a smaller cutting mat, one not as long. Um, that would certainly make this easier. Oop, gotta keep a hand on that. I'm very interested in this holographic tape. I'm gonna have to, or holographic laminate. I'm assuming it's kind of like the ones you put over like stickers. Um, but that sounds really fun. I have a Star Wars art journal that I try to bring up as much as possible because it's like one of the most fun things I've ever made. But I still have some like empty pages in it, and using something like holographic laminate sounds like it would fit in really well with it because I use a lot of like unconventional art materials like glitter gel pens and stuff in it. So I think that would be pretty fun. Oops, got a little bit carried away with that one. Have to go clean that part up a little bit later. Okay, so I think I've removed the whole thing. Here we go. Another leaf to add to my collage pile. And I did leave a couple little spots right here, so I'm just gonna try to remove that. All right, there we go. That's looking so cool. I'm so excited. I really love it. I think you are going to be able to like see the landscape, but like not totally see it at first. You're going to be like, oh, like I can tell that's something back there. And then you're like, boom, landscape. Love it. All right, let's go back to our red landscape and add the next layer onto here. So again, I'm using the brush tip side of the marker. And something else I've noticed kind of about these types of landscapes is they start out a little rockier in the back, and as they come to the foreground, it's more like those like rolling hill type ones. So you can, if you want to think about that, you can use some more like jagged lines up at the top and then smoother lines as you go down. Um, I think it'll look fine no matter what, but if you wanted to incorporate that into your design.
Hey, Caitlin, we just got a hot tip from Alyssa in the chat. Um, they have small cutting mats at the Dollar Tree in their craft section.
Oh, wow. It has been a minute since I've been to a Dollar Tree. I don't have one extremely close to me here,
That's
but
unfortunate. I have
I
one very close to
know,
me.
but like, I don't know. Washington is like a weird place. There's like, we don't really have a lot of Targets, and maybe it's just downtown Seattle. It's like, we
Hmm.
don't like have Targets. We don't have Walmarts. Like,
Oh, I'm so
there's,
sorry.
I know. So like it can like that's another one's Dollar Tree. Like I know there's Dollar Trees around, but it's just like one of those things that's not super accessible
Right.
to get there. But I always see people making the coolest Dollar Tree like creations. Um, yes. Okay. Is it pronounced Daiso? I think. I love that store. I have a Shiba Inu, and being so at it's like a Japanese dollar store, or kind of like it's cheaper. It's not everything's not a dollar, but it's more affordable. And so yeah, I have a Japanese dog breed. And I can find a lot of things with him on it at that store. So they have like Shiba Inu washi tape and Shiba Inu coffee mugs and like stationery sets and stuff. So yes, I love that store. I don't have one super duper close to me, but I'm a big sewist, and there's one right next to a fabric store. So whenever I go hit up one of those fabric stores, um, I will pop in and to see if they have any Shiba stuff I need to pick up. But so I on this most recent landscape layer here, I did, if you remember, I did one kind of swipe of the marker here, and I did two here, and then I did three on this one, and it's keeping it, you can see the color is much richer um, and darker. And I'm just doing the same thing, just continually going back to my water cup, filling my brush with water, and then kind of doing like, I like to do like a little swirl motion right over if there's a marker line that I'm trying to work out. I like to go there and like agitate it a little bit extra to try to spread out that pigment a little bit more. And that kind of helps to break it up. So that's why you see me doing like a big, like this like kind of small swirl motion with my brush. And once you break it up, then you can start to pull it down a little bit easier as well. All right, so I need to let that dry for a little bit. Um, and something else about the color palette that we got with these markers and colored pencils, um, is you could really, whew, oops, you could really easily create like a sunset or rainbow type composition as well. So, I encourage you to kind of like explore, um, like the like analogous colors in there. I think like this would probably be um a good order to explore in. Maybe the red or the yellow there. And each of these colors can blend into the next one. You can even put the yellow on this side. Um, but yeah, I encourage you to look at that. Um, if you're looking to like maybe you complete the monochromatic one and you say, um, oh, I feel like I've mastered doing a monochromatic one. I would start to look at like an analogous color scheme is using like, so monochromatic would be using one color, and analogous would be using the colors directly next to it. So using like the pink and the yellow are both kind of like red adjacent, or like next to it on the color wheel. So I would go in and use that. Or like if you mastered the blue one, now try to create a landscape using blue and green and purple, and try to expand on that a little bit. And the supplies we got in the box are perfect. Um, and I'm getting a little bit ahead. I saw Alyssa's comment on there about living 30 minutes south of Seattle. So that's fun. I still live in the city. I live a little bit north Seattle, but I live in uh, like Seattle proper. But yeah, I'm in kind of a weird area where I'm not really close to a lot of stuff, but it's a little harder to get to. But yeah, I do like to go out for special shopping trips, um, and check out the stuff I don't get to on a regular basis or in my neighborhood. This is still a little bit wet, so I'm going to let that sit for a minute. And I'll show you really quickly. This is one of my other art journals, but I did do a drawing recently in it using uh the markers and colored pencils with more of a rainbow composition. And I was just going to show that to you real quick. So this this is not watercolor paper, so the markers don't pick up as much. So like this is where I've scribbled the markers and then tried to hit it with water, even directly after, and they'll definitely like stick to the page more. Which is that is like one of my biggest changes, I think, from being an art snacker is having trouble with water soluble material and thinking it was the pen and not thinking it was the paper. And so through being like an art snacker and watching tutorials at the beginning of my art snacks journey, I quickly found out that it wasn't the marker I was having problems with, it was what kind of paper I was putting it on. So that's definitely something to like keep in mind if you're like new, especially to like maybe you're not new to watercolor, but maybe if you're new to like water soluble media, it helps so much to be using a paper that is supposed to take that kind of medium. So, um, a little bit of tip for you for that. Or just like it's totally fine. You can use these markers on paper that isn't watercolor paper, of course, but just to know going into it that like it's not going to expand the same way, like how this bleeds so beautifully on watercolor paper, this is only gonna like bleed out a little bit on a more traditional type, like this isn't even art paper. This is just like journal paper, if that makes sense. So, but I wanted to show you, even though it's not bleeding out the way that it does on this paper, how beautiful the color scheme is in both of these markers and colored pencils to blend into each other. And this is with using the uh, thicker brush side blended out a bit, and then I went in with the other side of the marker to do some of that detail work. Um, so I wanted to show you this to inspire you to, expand beyond a monochromatic color scheme and see how you can use like the analogous color scheme to create a multicolored composition as well. So let me check this page now and see if it's dry enough. I think it feels dry enough. Let's see, do a little test here. Mm, Yeah, I'm gonna go for it. All right, this will be my final piece here. Um, and this page has kind of like been through a lot over the last hour. Um, but so it's going to be something I'm going to color this in, but it might be something later I come back and do another pass over, just directly over it to really deepen and darken up this color. Um, and maybe once it's fully dry, I'll come in with my colored pencil as well and really uh, deepen up some of those areas. But here, I'm not going to bleed this out at all, and I'm just coloring a solid color here for the foreground. And I would like it to just be slightly darker here in the front, but I need to let it dry before that because the paper is kind of like telling me it's at its absorption limit, and I don't want to like make it pill up or anything right there. So I need to give it a minute to dry up right there, and then um, I can go back and kind of make it a little darker. But this kind of looks like Mars, right? At least it's giving Mars. Um,
I was just thinking that it is
yeah,
giving Mars right now.
it is giving Mars. Uh, but yeah, so again, I'll walk through some of my examples and maybe after like letting this marinate for the whole class, I'm gonna show you the cutouts again and maybe they'll like hit you in a new way and inspire you to go to your sketchbook and see what you've already drawn, see what you can turn into something new. Um, so here's that first one with the doorway. Real simple, 1 point perspective, nothing too crazy, and just cut around the door. And I love that the purple and the yellow are complementary colors, so you're getting that like big contrast difference there. Reminds me of like a sci-fi movie. And then we have the galaxy page next. Have the window cut out. Um, and I saw some really cute, like, I almost did it with this, but like leaving like an animal cutout or doing that as like a central layer where like you have your window and then the next page would be like a little cutout of your dog or your cat sitting on the window and then the background could be really fun. There's what we learned last live stream. Our leaf cutout, which is going to be gorgeous when it's done. I'm so excited. And monochromatic green. And then this is going to be my Polaroid cutout, which you can already see how that's going to develop. This one would be good, real simple, like, cutting out squares. Good place to start. And then the red landscape. And remember exploring some fruit shapes here for cutout ideas. And then that last one of doing a cover-up page on something to peek through to your other page. So we'll see how this one, I think even though I don't think this will turn into something like as cool as the other ones, it makes me happier than whatever was here before. And like that's the real goal there. So and then like if you mess up, then like whatever, it was already kind of a mess up page anyway. And so yep, that is about it. I think we have about 10-ish minutes left. If Sarah, you want to
Yeah,
facilitate some show and tell or sharing time?
happy to. Let me just take you off overhead. If anybody wants to share what they made in this session, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be this cutout lesson. Maybe you did something else. Feel free to turn your camera on. Let's see. Caitlin, looks like you have plans for your oh, hello, Alyssa. I'm gonna spotlight you so we can all see it. So feel free to turn your sound on if you want to talk about your work.
Yeah, so I was thinking galaxy from the beginning, from the last week. So I did some ink that I got in the art journal snacks.
Yep, love it.
I did that first, let it dry, and the marker writes on top of it.
Oh, nice.
So I could see where I was cutting out.
Yeah.
My cutout job's not so great, but and then I only started on the landscape because cutting out took a lot more.
Yeah, that looks awesome. I love a
Oh,
galaxy.
yeah, I'm not very good with this camera. There we go.
Perfect example of the crossover of all of the boxes.
And
I
I
know.
sketched some on the side while I was waiting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I had to resist so hard to not do a galaxy because I was like, I did so many last week, but I knew it would be such a cool concept, so I'm so glad that you did it.
Thanks.
Yeah, great work. Thank you for sharing. If anybody else wants to share, just let me know and I can spotlight you. Caitlin, I have a feeling whatever you do not finish today, the people are going to want to see. So definitely make sure you post your finished pieces on Mix.
Yes, I'm going to try to get them to a photographable state and then be able to include them into that article that I was talking about with the sketchbook prompts.
Got it. Um, Message from Angela, still sketching, totally understand. Yes, just make sure you post when it's done. We want to see it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Caitlin, did you say you had a list of ideas that you wanted to share, or did we already go over that?
I do. I have some lists. If you want me to talk through it, I can a little bit. They're a little all over the place, but for windows, so we talked about like I showed like kind of your basic normal window. But then beyond that, if you want to go into showing like a window on a train, look up some references for showing like a train seat window or an ornate window like a castle window or a church window or like some kind of medieval type thing, and you can really get into the illustration around that. Um, we did the lift the flap with like a door. I talked about using some quotes to do storytelling or maybe as like your jumping off point to like how you want to make the page into more of a metaphor. So encourage you to maybe on the opposite page of your cutout to um, do a quote, or beyond that, you can put the start of the quote and then it kind of reveals the full quote once you open it up. I think that could be really cool.
When you say quote, do you mean
Mhm.
like individual letters?
No, I'm thinking like a full quote, like a song lyric, or
Oh, okay.
like a or like a famous quote of someone.
Got it.
That
Got
makes
it.
sense.
I love the idea of like cutout typography, but my weakness is getting them backwards because you're like cutting out on one side, but you want it to be legible on the other side, on the
Right.
actual window side. So just my 2 cents. You gotta really practice that.
Yeah. I'm thinking something where like you can, like if I go back to this um windowed one, or oh, here you go.
Yeah.
Then like you would write something in here, and I'm gonna put like
Oh,
this is like the top of mind, so this isn't like a fully fleshed out best one. But if you think of like putting like adventure or something in there, and
got
then
it.
like down here it would say is out there. So then when you flip this page, the whole thing would say adventure is out there. But like, so it still makes sense on this page, but it kind of reveals the full idea on the next page. And it's kind of
Got it.
diving into more of that storytelling portion of it, of like, this is saying, without using words, this is already kind of saying adventure is out there, but then you can, I think, incorporate words into that as well. Or you can put something like journal on this side, and then just do your concept on this side, I think would also be cool. Um,
Got it. I needed that visual because I was like, are you cutting out letters? That's gonna take you
No, yeah, that
forever.
makes sense. It could go so many ways, I think. Like I do like the idea of like making the cutout letters and then that turning into something else too would be really cool. I talked a little bit about the fruit colors, or the doing like hexagons for like bees. Like if you did a yellow one, you could cut out like hexagon shapes. Um, and then really diving more into the foreground background. So a lot of the cutouts I showed you were like an actual windowed cutout, but you can do something that cuts out right here, like across the page. So you could cut out like the tree shape as your foreground and then be able to turn that page. Or you could cut out a city skyline shape. And it doesn't have to be this like square shape. You can think of more of like cutting out a foreground, or the you could cut out, halfway in between this kind of shape and it reveals something else on the next side. So really, yeah, diving into your foreground. And if you want to, take up 3 pages, you can do foreground, midground, background, and really exploring that. But yeah, those are some of my ideas that are stirring around. Um, and yeah, that's about it. Just have my
That's
cute little
awesome.
leaf cutouts there.
I'm curious where you're gonna put those next.
I don't know, honestly. I'm excited.
Very cool. All right. Well, this has been super fun. I have one of these sketchbooks too, so I'm thinking I was gonna do some collage stuff, but now I'm like, maybe I need to cut some stuff out and
At least
make
one
some windows.
page,
Yeah,
one
I need
spread.
one window,
Yep.
window to the next phase.
Yep.
So yeah, we can end a little bit on the early side. So feel free to use this time, everyone who's watching, um, for work time, and make sure whatever you make, we want to see it on the Art Snacks Mix group. Um, and yeah, this will be recorded and shared probably on Monday or Tuesday, and you'll get a notification when that's ready too. So, Caitlin, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it,
Yeah, it was really fun hanging out.
as always. And thank you to those who joined us live, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye.